Hey, you guys, I have a very disturbing, sick, twisted, dark story about a woman named Stephanie Taylor. Ashanti's father, Thomas G. Douglas. His stage name is Ken Katie. Now, I want to explain why I will be speaking about Ashanti and her name will be in the title because originally I wasn't going to use her name or speak about her. However, she allegedly plays a part in the story at the very end, so I just wanted to let you guys know that. So, a very popular YouTuber named Tasha K uploaded a video on April 30th, 2019. The title was Ashanti's father, Ken Katie, allegedly molested 8-year-old girl, which is now the title is switched. The title says exclusive singer Ashanti's father, Thomas Douglas, allegedly impregnates an 11-year-old 3 times. Again, this story is about a woman named Stephanie Taylor. It roughly takes place in the early 70s, and I'm saying roughly because there were some discrepancies in the timeline. For me at least, that does not mean this woman is lying. I want to repeat. I'm going to be questioning some things because I don't lack discernment. I'm going to question some things. Again, however, I don't believe this woman is lying, and what I'm going to say doesn't mean she's lying. I'm just asking questions. That's it. That's all. So let's get into her story. So Stephanie is alleging that Mr. Douglas raped, molested, and impregnated her 3 times from the ages 8 to 15. Stephanie was a young girl who grew up in New York in a dysfunctional family. That's in her own words. At the age of 8, she joined Tina Douglas dance class, and that's the first time she ever came in contact with Mr. Douglas. Stephanie claims that when she was 8, Mr. Douglas was roughly in his early 20s, so doing basic math tells me that when she was 8, he may have been 19 to 21 years old. Now, again, I tried to put together the most accurate timeline I could come up with as Miss Taylor jumped all over the place telling her story. And there weren't many counter questions from Tasha, as it was more like a woman venting and telling these horrible, disgusting things happening to her, and another woman listening rather than an interview. Now, Miss Taylor wants to make it extremely clear that she is not telling her story for monetary gain. She is telling her story to simply get this off her spirit. She does not want to live with this any longer. Stephanie says that when she first met the Douglases, everything was fine. Tina looked at her like her little protege, and Thomas would play with all the girls in the dance class, tickling them, and, they would have a ball. He was always extremely good with the kids and nice. However, according to Miss Taylor, things soon would take a sickening turn. Miss Taylor says Mr. Douglas took a different type of liking to her than he did the other girls. She remembers the first time he felt her up, saying, "This is bad," and him saying, "No, I'm supposed to do this." But later in the story, she says she didn't know it was bad because back then, no one explained good touch or bad touch. Stephanie says from 8 to 9 years old, Thomas would touch her in inappropriate places. She recalls him dating her sister, and while her sister was in the front seat, he would reach in the back seat and touch her private areas. She also says when he would come over to have sex with his sister, Her sister then will be 20 years old. After having sex with her, he would come in her room and touch her. She said that she used to unscrew the light bulbs out of her lamps so that she can sit in the dark because she felt nasty. She felt icky. She says that she would hear her sister say to Douglas, "Why do you want to go in there with her?" Later, her sister would, well, follow up. It's unclear if this happened later, but she said right after that, her sister would say, "Why do you have the lights off in here?" Now, it is unclear if Stephanie's sister was standing in the doorway while Mr. Douglas was touching Stephanie and she couldn't see because the lights were off. And it's unclear when Stephanie's sister found out this was happening to Stephanie, because she later on in the story says that while their mother was on their deathbed, Stephanie held a grudge towards their mother because she thought that their mother knew that Douglas was doing this to her while she was a child. And the sister said, no, mommy did not know. So again, it's unclear if the sister was aware, but to me, the backseat story says it all for me about the sister. Stephanie says she remembers the day Douglas first penetrated her at the age 10. She says she remembered thinking that it was her period. And Douglas says to her, "No, I broke your hymen." Now, I don't know about you, but there's some grown women, believe it or not, who doesn't even know what a hymen is. So, it's amazing to me that a 20 some odd something man would know to use the word hymen. So she says, "What's that?" And he was like, "I popped your cherry." Now before this, she says that she remembers getting her period in November of 1974. Now this is before that incident. So if I don't know why she said to him, "Is this my period?" if she had already gotten her period. Again, it's unclear which happened first because she was just jumping around and there was no counter to her questions. Again, she was just venting, and it was more of a therapy session than an interview. So throughout me telling you this story, I'm going to be asking questions. Again, I want to stress this does not mean I believe this woman's lying. She remembered way too many details. I do believe something happened to this woman. Stephanie recalls two specific incidents where her molester, Mr. Douglas, almost got caught in the act or got caught in the act by Tina, and Tina ignored it. One being, she was in a van. She describes this van where he had curtains in the van, and she says that the curtains were safety pinned together so that no one can see inside. She says one day he was inside the van molesting her, and Tina busted open the doors. She screamed at Stephanie, "What are you doing in here?" And Mr. Douglas says to her, "I brought her to see you." She said that she just froze and she couldn't say anything. Another time where they lived in these apartments, Tina came home for lunch and she opened the door. Mr. Douglas put his foot up against the door and was pretending that the chain on the door was stuck. She said that once Tina entered, her clothing was disheveled. And in her mind, she was thinking, Please ask me what this man is doing to me. And when she said that, it bothered my spirit so much, I just bust out sobbing. Stephanie says Thomas grew more bolder as time went on, and the story gets darker. She said he would have sex with her, and then when Tina would come home in the middle of him molesting his baby, he would have her hide behind a dresser and would have sex with Tina. She said that she would wait behind the dresser and be so quiet she would try not to breathe or make any noises or knock anything down. And when Tina would leave, she would then come from behind the dresser. Thomas was so comfortable with his disgusting and sick ways, he would walk in public with this child as if they were boyfriend and girlfriend at the age 11. Stephanie claims that this monster impregnated her 3 times. First, when she was 11, she had to go to an unknown place in New York, have an abortion, and she had to pretend that she was 20 years old to get this abortion without any anesthesia. The next time when she was 12, the last time being when she was 15. She claims that Mr. Douglas paid for all 3 abortions. Stephanie claims at age 12, while in dance class, Tina Douglas approached her and asked her, was Mr. Douglas messing around with her then 20-year-old sister? She says that Tina had a way of putting the fear of God in her. So she lied and said no. Tina then kicked her out of her dance class and said she never wanted to see her again. Now, after being kicked out of Tina Douglas's dance class, you would think that the abuse would stop, but no. Over the next 3 years, she had to deal with Douglas's physical abuse in many ways. She names one time when he smacked her for being quote-unquote mouthy. She also dealt with a lot of people disregarding this little girl. There were so many people she named in this story who said to Mr. Douglas, why are you always with this little girl? It's unclear what his response was, but the people she named was someone named Janelle or Jamel, his own mother, his sisters, Nora, Tiny, Mona, his brothers, and a few of his friends that she left unnamed. Okay, guys, as I told you in the beginning of the story, Ashanti comes in at the end. So recently, Mrs. Taylor was trying to get in contact with Tina again because she wanted closure. So she tried direct messaging Tina on Instagram. When she went to go do that, the first icon she saw was Ashanti. So she looked on Ashanti's page and saw that Ashanti recently posted about her dad. She messaged Ashanti, direct messaged Ashanti, and said, do you really know who your father is? Ashanti messages her back and says, what do you mean? So she flat out tells Ashanti, your father is a molester. This dialogue then leads to Ashanti and Miss Taylor setting up a meeting. In the beginning, I do believe Miss Taylor was speaking to Ashanti. However, I feel like somewhere in that dialogue, she started talking to Tina Douglas unknowingly. So there was a meeting set up. The first meeting was supposed to be at 11 p.m. The date is unknown. Miss Taylor then told who she thought was Ashanti that she didn't feel comfortable with meeting her at that time. It's unclear how they got to the next time, but Miss Taylor says that she showed up at their address that was given to her at 8:30 a.m. She says that she sees 3 vehicles in the horseshoe, and she didn't feel comfortable with pulling all the way in, so she drove off and she went to the nearest Burger King. She then messages Ashanti and says, "Hey, I thought you were an early riser. I was over there at the house." She says Ashanti gives her 2 excuses and says, "Oh, I was getting dressed, but you're going to have to hurry up because I have somewhere to be." So Miss Taylor tells Ashanti that she wasn't comfortable with showing up. Somewhere in this conversation, Ashanti made her feel comfortable enough to pull up and come back to the address that was first given to her. When she got there, she pulled up to the mailbox and then she inched in a little more. She then sees no other than the man she claims who tormented her for 8 years, Mr. Thomas Douglas. He approaches her vehicle and asks her, what is she doing there? She says that I've been speaking to your daughter and she gave me this address. I was invited here. He calls her a liar and says that Ashanti would have no contact with her. She then says she told him, yes, she did. I have text messages to prove it. He says to her, I want to see those text messages. She says she then gets scared and drives off. Miss Taylor claims she pulled over not too far from the house and thought about suicide. She says what kept her from doing it is her husband not knowing where she was. She claims that she was supposed to be at work that morning, but she told her husband she was going to pay the car insurance. Miss Taylor also claims that after leaving, she messaged Ashanti back and said, why would you have your dad come out? Ashanti allegedly says to her, no, that wasn't me, that was my mother. Come back. If you want to leave the letter for her, just come back and leave it in the mailbox. Miss Taylor says she did not go back to the house. Now I'm going to go through some of the questions I had and speak a little about Ashanti, quote unquote, setting her up. I believe in the beginning it was Ashanti who she was talking to. However, I think somewhere in that conversation, she was no longer speaking to Ashanti. She was speaking to Tina, and that's why Mr. Douglas came outside.